Saskatchewan is a prairie province in Canada, which has a total area of 651,900 square kilometers and a land area of 592,534 square kilometers, the remainder being water area. Saskatchewan is bordered on the west by Alberta, on the north by the Northwest Territories, on the east by Manitoba, and on the south by the American states of Montana and North Dakota. As of December 2013, the population of Saskatchewan was estimated at 1,114,170. Residents primarily live in the southern half of the province. Of the total population, 257,300 live in the province's largest city, Saskatoon, while 210,000 live in the provincial capital, Regina. Other major cities include Prince Albert, Moose Jaw, Yorkton, Estevan, Swift Current, and North Battleford. Saskatchewan is a landlocked province with large distances to moderating bodies of waters. As a result, its climate is extremely continental, rendering severe winters all throughout the province. Southern areas have very warm or hot summers. Midale and Yellowgrass near the U.S. border are tied for the highest ever recorded temperatures in Canada, with 45 degrees Celsius observed at both locations in July 1937. In winter, temperatures below -45 degrees Celsius are possible even in the south during extreme cold snaps. Saskatchewan has been inhabited for thousands of years by various indigenous groups, and first explored by Europeans in 1690 and settled in 1774. It became a province in 1905. Its name derived from the Saskatchewan River. The river was known as Kisiskasawani-Sipi in the Cree language. In the early 20th century, the province became known as a stronghold for Canadian democratic socialism. Tommy Douglas, who was premier from 1944 to 1961, became the first social democratic politician to be elected in North America. The province's economy is based on agriculture, mining, and energy. Saskatchewan's current premier is Brad Wall and its lieutenant governor is Vaughan Solomon Schofield. In 1992, the federal and provincial governments signed a historic land claim agreement with First Nations in Saskatchewan. The First Nations received compensation and were permitted to buy land on the open market for the tribes. They have acquired about 3,079 square kilometers, now reserve lands. Some First Nations have used their settlement to invest in urban areas, including Saskatoon. Geography. As Saskatchewan's borders largely follow the geographic coordinates of longitude and latitude, the province is roughly a quadrilateral, or a shape with four sides. However, the 49th parallel boundary and the 60th northern border appear curved on globes and many maps. Additionally, the eastern boundary of the province is partially crooked rather than following a line of longitude, as correction lines were devised by surveyors prior to the Homestead Program. Saskatchewan is part of the Western Provinces and is bounded on the west by Alberta, on the north by the Northwest Territories, on the northeast by Nunavut, on the east by Manitoba, and on the south by the American states of Montana and North Dakota. Saskatchewan has the distinction of being the only Canadian province for which no borders correspond to physical geographic features. Along with Alberta, Saskatchewan is one of only two provinces that are landlocked. The overwhelming majority of Saskatchewan's population is located in the southern third of the province, south of the 53rd parallel. Saskatchewan contains two major natural regions: the Canadian Shield in the north and the interior plains in the south. Northern Saskatchewan is mostly covered by boreal forest except for the Lake Athabasca sand dunes, the largest active sand dunes in the world north of 58 degrees, and adjacent to the southern shore of Lake Athabasca. Southern Saskatchewan contains another area with sand dunes known as the Great Sand Hills, covering over 300 square kilometers. The Cypress Hills, located in the southwestern corner of Saskatchewan, and Killdeer Badlands, are areas of the province that remained unglaciated during the last glaciation period, the Wisconsin glaciation. The province's highest point, at 1,392 meters, is located in the Cypress Hills, less than 2 kilometers from the provincial boundary with Alberta. The lowest point is the shore of Lake Athabasca, at 213 meters. Climate: Saskatchewan receives more hours of sunshine than any other Canadian province. The province lies far from any significant body of water. This fact, combined with its northerly latitude, gives it a warm summer, corresponding to its humid continental climate in the central and most of the eastern parts of the province, as well as the Cypress Hills, drying off to a semi-arid steppe climate in the southwestern part of the province. Drought can affect agricultural areas during long periods with little or no precipitation at all. The northern parts of Saskatchewan, from about La Ronge northward, have a subarctic climate with a shorter summer season. Summers can get very hot, sometimes above 38 degrees Celsius during the day, and with humidity decreasing from northeast to southwest. Warm southern winds blow from the plains and into montane regions of the western United States during much of July and August. Very cool or hot but changeable air masses often occur during spring and in September. Winters are usually bitterly cold, with frequent Arctic air descending from the north, with high temperatures not breaking -17 degrees Celsius for weeks at a time. Warm Chinook winds often blow from the west, bringing periods of mild weather. Annual precipitation averages 30 to 45 centimeters across the province, with the bulk of rain falling in June, July, and August. Saskatchewan is one of the most tornado-active parts in Canada, averaging roughly 12 to 18 tornadoes per year, some violent. In 2012, 33 tornadoes were reported in the province. The Regina cyclone took place in June 1912 when 28 people died in a F4 Fujita-scale tornado. Severe and non-severe thunderstorm events occur in Saskatchewan, usually from early spring to late summer. Hail, strong winds and isolated tornadoes are a temporary occurrence. The hottest temperature ever recorded anywhere in Canada happened in Saskatchewan. The temperature rose to 45 degrees Celsius in Midale and Yellowgrass. The coldest ever recorded in the province was -56.7 degrees Celsius in Prince Albert, which is north of Saskatoon. History: Saskatchewan has been populated by various indigenous peoples of North America, including members of the Sarsi, Niitsitapi, Atsina, Cree, Suo, Assiniboine, Lakota and Sioux. The first known European to enter Saskatchewan was Henry Kelsey in 1690, who traveled up the Saskatchewan River in hopes of trading fur with the province's indigenous peoples. The first permanent European settlement was a Hudson's Bay Company post at Cumberland House, founded in 1774 by Samuel Hearne. In 1762 the south of the province was part of the Spanish Louisiana until 1802. In 1803 the Louisiana Purchase transferred from France to the United States part of what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan. In 1818 it was ceded to the United Kingdom. Most of what is now Saskatchewan, though, was part of Rupert's Land and controlled by the Hudson's Bay Company, which claimed rights to all watersheds flowing into Hudson Bay, including the Saskatchewan River, Churchill, Assiniboine, Sourish, and Qu'Appelle River systems. In the late 1850s and early 1860s, scientific expeditions led by John Palliser and Henry Youlehind explored the prairie region of the province. In 1870, Canada acquired the Hudson's Bay Company's territories and formed the Northwest Territories to administer the vast territory between British Columbia and Manitoba. The Crown also entered into a series of numbered treaties with the indigenous peoples of the area, which serve as the basis of the relationship between First Nations, as they are called today, and the Crown. Since the late 20th century, Land losses and inequities as a result of those treaties have been subject to negotiation for settlement between the First Nations in Saskatchewan and the federal government, in collaboration with provincial governments. In 1885, post-Confederation Canada's first naval battle was fought in Saskatchewan, when a steamship engaged the Attribution at Batoche in the Northwest Rebellion. A seminal event in the history of what was to become Western Canada was the 1874 March west of the federal government's new Northwest Mounted Police. Despite poor equipment and lack of provisions, the men on the march persevered and established a federal presence in the new territory. Historians have argued that had this expedition been unsuccessful, the expansionist United States would have been tempted to expand into the political vacuum. The construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway would likely have been delayed or taken a different, more northerly route, stunting the early growth of towns like Brandon, Regina, Medicine Hat and Calgary, had these existed at all. Failure to construct the railway could also have forced British Columbia to join the United States. In 1876, following their defeat of United States Army forces at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in Montana Territory in the United States, the Lakota chief Sitting Bull led several thousand of his people to Wood Mountain. Survivors and descendants founded Wood Mountain Reserve in 1914. European Canadian settlement of the province started to take off as the Canadian Pacific Railway was built in the early 1880s, and the Canadian government divided up the land by the Dominion Land Survey and gave free land to any willing settlers. The Northwest Mounted Police set up several posts and forts across Saskatchewan, including Fort Walsh in the Cypress Hills, and Wood Mountain Post in south-central Saskatchewan near the United States border. Many MEAQTI's people, who had not been signatories to a treaty, had moved to the South Branch settlement in Prince Albert District north of present-day Saskatoon following the Red River Rebellion in Manitoba in 1870. In the early 1880s, the Canadian government refused to hear the Métis' grievances, which stemmed from land use issues. Finally, in 1885, the MEAQTI's, led by Louis Riel, staged the Northwest Rebellion and declared a provisional government. They were defeated by a Canadian militia brought to the Canadian prairies by the new Canadian Pacific Railway. Riel, who surrendered and was convicted of treason in a packed Regina courtroom, was hanged on November 16, 1885. Since then, the government has recognized the MEAQTI's as an Aboriginal people with status rights, and provided them with various benefits related to that status. 20th century. As more settlers came to the prairies on the railway, the population grew. On September 1, 1905, Saskatchewan became a province, with Inauguration Day held September 4. The Dominion Lands Act permitted settlers to acquire 1/4 of a square mile of land to homestead and offered an additional quarter upon establishing a homestead. Immigration peaked in 1910, and in spite of the initial difficulties of frontier life, distance from towns, sod homes, and back-breaking labor, new settlers established a European-Canadian style of prosperous agrarian society. In 1913, the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association was established as Saskatchewan's first ranchers' organization. At its founding convention in 1913, the members established 3 goals: to watch over legislation, to forward the interests of the stock growers in every honorable and legitimate way, and to suggest to Parliament legislation to meet changing conditions and requirements. Its farming equivalent, the Saskatchewan Grain Growers Association, was the dominant political force in the province until the 1920s. It had close ties with the governing Liberal Party. In the late 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan, imported from the United States and Ontario, gained brief popularity in nativist circles in Saskatchewan and Alberta. The clan, briefly allied with the Provincial Conservative Party because of their mutual dislike for Premier James G. Jimmy Gardner and his Liberals, enjoyed about 2 years of prominence. It declined and disappeared, subject to widespread political and media opposition, plus internal scandals involving the use of the organization's funds. In 1970, the first annual Canadian West End Attribution was held in Regina. This farm industry trade show, with its strong emphasis on livestock, is rated as one of the 5 top livestock shows in North America, along with those in Houston, Denver, Louisville and Toronto. The province celebrated the 75th anniversary of its establishment in 1980, with Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, presiding over the official ceremonies. In 2005, 25 years later, her sister, Queen Elizabeth II, attended the events held to mark Saskatchewan's centennial. Since the late 20th century, First Nations have become more politically active in seeking justice for past inequities, especially related to government taking of Indigenous lands. The federal and provincial governments have negotiated on numerous land claims, and developed a program of treaty land entitlement, enabling First Nations to buy land to be taken into reserves with money from settlements of claims. In 1992, the federal and provincial governments signed an historic land claim agreement with Saskatchewan First Nations. Under the agreement, the First Nations received money to buy land on the open market. As a result, about 761,000 acres have been turned into reserve land, and many First Nations continue to invest their settlement dollars in urban areas, including Saskatoon. The money from such settlements has enabled First Nations to invest in businesses and other economic infrastructure. Demographics. According to the Canada 2011 census, the largest ethnic group in Saskatchewan is German, followed by English, Scottish, Canadian, Irish, Ukrainian, French, First Nations, Norwegian, and Polish. The largest denominations by number of adherents according to the 2001 census were the Roman Catholic Church with 286,815, the United Church of Canada with 187,450, and the Lutherans with 78,520. 148,535 responded, no religion. Municipalities. 10 largest municipalities by population. This list does not include Lloydminster, which has a total population of 27,804, but straddles the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. As of 2011, 9,772 people lived on the Saskatchewan side, which would make it Saskatchewan's 10th largest municipality. All of the listed communities are considered cities by the province, with the exception of Corman Park, which is a rural municipality. Municipalities in the province with a population of 5,000 or more can receive official city status. Economy. Historically, Saskatchewan's economy was primarily associated with agriculture. However, increasing diversification has resulted in agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting only making up 6.8% of the province's GDP. Saskatchewan grows a large portion of Canada's grain. Wheat is the most familiar crop and the one most often associated with the province, but other grains like canola, flax, rye, oats, peas, lentils, canary seed, and barley are also produced. Beef cattle production in the province is only exceeded by Alberta. In the northern part of the province, forestry is also a significant industry. Mining is a major industry in the province, with Saskatchewan being the world's largest exporter of potash and uranium. Oil and natural gas production is also a very important part of Saskatchewan's economy, although the oil industry is larger. Among Canadian provinces, only Alberta exceeds Saskatchewan in overall oil production. Heavy crude is extracted in the Lloydminster-Karaburg-Kindersley areas. Light crude is found in the Kindersley-Swift Current areas as well as the Weyburn-Estevan fields. Natural gas is found almost entirely in the western part of Saskatchewan, from the Primrose Lake area through Lloydminster, Unity, Kindersley, Leader, and around Maple Creek areas. Saskatchewan's GDP in 2006 was approximately $45.922 billion, with economic sectors breaking down in the following way. A list of the top 100 companies includes the Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan, Federated Cooperatives Limited, and IPSCO. Major Saskatchewan-based Crown corporations are Saskatchewan Government Insurance, SaskTel, Sask Energy, and Sask Power. Bombardier runs the NATO Flying Training Center at 15 Wing, near Moose Jaw. Bombardier was awarded a long-term contract in the late 1990s for $2.8 billion from the federal government for the purchase of military aircraft and the running of the training facility. Sask Power since 1929 has been the principal supplier of electricity in Saskatchewan, serving more than 451,000 customers and managing $4.5 billion in assets. Sask Power is a major employer in the province with almost 2,500 permanent full-time staff located in 71 communities. Provincial finances. The tabulated data covers each fiscal year. All data is in $1,000s. 1. These values reflect the estimated population at the beginning of the fiscal year. 2. These values reflect the debt of the General Revenue Fund alone at the end of the fiscal year. They do not reflect the debt of government service organizations. 3. These values reflect the combined debt of the government service enterprises at the end of the fiscal year. Sask Power, Sask Energy, and SaskTel account for 62.3%, 18.2%, and 12.1% of Crown debt, respectively. 4. The highest rate of provincial corporate income tax was reduced from 17% to 14% on July 1, 2006. It was further reduced to 13% on July 1, 2007, and finally to 12% on July 1, 2008. The tax on paid-up capital was reduced from 0.6% to 0.3% on July 1, 2006, to 0.15% on July 1, 2007, and abolished altogether on July 1, 2008. These displayed values were obtained by adding the corporate income tax for each year with the corporate capital tax. 5. The provincial sales tax rate was reduced from 7% to 5% on October 28, 2006. 6. These values are the credit ratings from Standard & Poor's as of the end of the fiscal year. Source: Government of Saskatchewan.